I'm going to introduce Cherie Burton. I'm excited to have her be part of something that, I think this is going to be epic. I think we're going to look back on this one, Cherie has been part of my life for a while, and oh my gosh, Cherie was part of another first launch for me. So I did a conference back in, I think it was 2010, January of 2010. So that's been 12 years. And Cherie was my keynote for that. So, wow. So we're back around 12 years later. I love it. So, and in that time period, she's done so many things. We had to kind of narrow it in with this introduction. She is currently the podcast host of Women Seeking Wholeness and specializes in holistic emotional restoration. One avenue of that transformation she has evolved is the alchemy of essential oils and aromatherapy. She is both a mom of 6 and an international business leader. In her spare time, she facilitates Stand, Speak, and Shine programs for women. I love Cherie's intelligence. She gets things that are very cerebral, and she has soul. And I don't see that together at that level very often. I've done her soul discovery programs, and I will honestly look at that as one of the most pivotal experiences in my journey. Thank you. I am so honored to have you part of this. And I'm so excited for how we're sharing together in this, kind of in this way. So anything you want to add, Cherie?
Oh, you almost made me cry a little bit. Thank you, Cristine. I just adore you, and I love your brain too. I can't keep up with you half the time. So, just thank you for having me. This is my passion ad nauseum to talk about this stuff.
Oh no, it's just, it's like we can do libraries, right? And you've got an amazing library going on with your podcast, but all right. So our title today, Raising Frequency Through Healing and Recovery. And Cherie's launching this concept with me, the frequency model, with raising your frequency and then adding in her special flavor of Stand, Speak, Shine. So I'm looking forward to it all. So let's talk about frequencies and vibrations. So I'm going to do the quick version, but everything radiates a specific frequency in the fields of consciousness. So fields of consciousness, as we talk about this, there's a map of consciousness we're going to talk more about. Low vibration is on one end of the continuum, and high vibration is on the other. So we see this in multiple areas. You can imagine music, obviously, that's I think tone is one easy way to access frequency or comprehend frequency. And when I've described this before, I've used the example of death metal and low frequency, and then high frequency being hymns and classical music. And, I've discovered, the yoga music, that Kundalini music. I don't know if, it's amazing that 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫 is a very high vibrational sound. That might be beyond some, and might be familiar to some. But emotions also have frequencies. And literature, you think about, what you read has frequencies. And so if you kind of picture also on a continuum, you've got 7 colors. So it's not like there's wrong and right. There's red and there's purple. You've got 7 notes on a keyboard on in a basic range, and there's a lower note and there's a higher note. And so there's no judgment here. I want to kind of preface with that. And as we talk about some of these little frequencies, I know Cherie was wanted to be sensitive to people who deal with this in your life. No judgment. It is part of our journey. And I want to say, and the book that I've created, and I'm going to have to work around with title, but I did use the concept of a ladder of love, that every step is a living experience, and it's all here to teach and to supporter journey. So 7 levels. I was teaching in a jail. I remember that was the low frequency, but it was an amazing opportunity when I was given in a 7-day period 2 maps. And one came from this book, Spiritual Progression. And, I remember that period of my time because I was trying to teach principles to these inmates, these people that were so vast in their life experience, really. They had gone into some really dark stuff, but they were so ready to learn. And so I was asking for answers to help me understand what was going on with them, but also in my own recovery. I had around 20 years of recovery at that point in time and now have 33. But I was on this journey that I was trying to make sense of and that nobody had really modeled for me completely. And so the first book, Spiritual Progression in the Last Days, is Blaine M. Jorgensen. And so that's, for those who have a Christian background, or especially those who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that's a model that he uses to explain it. And so I had that side that I was familiar with, but then this other one was shown to me out of a book. I think it was Linda Perks, who Cherie and I both know. That's how I met Cherie, actually through Linda. Mm-hmm. She opens up this book by Barbara Ann Brennan called Hands of Light, which is all about healing, using auric fields and understanding the vital body. And then I saw the 7 levels laid out in this other way. And it was like, okay, I'm supposed to see these 7 levels for some reason. And as we talk, the 4 levels you see at the bottom, so those 4 levels actually represent the 4 bodies. You've got physical body, emotional or energy body, mental body, and then I combine all the others into quantum body because I can't really distinguish between etheric and astral and celestial. I don't quite get all that. If you do, tell me more. But quantum body is basically that invisible realm of information. Okay, so back to the frequencies. These calibrations. Now, I had not heard of Dr. Hawkins at this point in time. It's about 15 years ago, I would say, or maybe close to 20 years ago. So I'm starting to get this sense of 7 levels in my mind, but as I'm trying to explain it to people, it's like I don't have all the pieces until I found Power versus Force. And so his book, Power versus Force, outlines.
I'm looking it up right now.
There you are. Yes, thank you.
It's such a classic work of mapping consciousness and mapping this frequency. Yeah, he kind of was the groundbreaker researcher for that. He had a background in neuropsychiatry, which was interesting to me too. Yeah, he's a medical doctor. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And his story was that he saw these people in, really he's passed now, but I think I met him when he was almost 90 years old. I was able to attend a live lecture from him at a Hay House conference. And so in his 80s, he was still, around teaching, but he'd, back in the 50s, it would have been the mental illness world was very low frequency. It was, and that is why even today, people don't want to talk about mental illness, and we have all these laws around protecting privacy because it was so taboo. And anyway, so he started to look at, why does it have to be like that? There's more to this picture. So, but with emotions. So he's developed this map, and people see this map in so many places. It's out there. If you look at the frequency map, at about 200 is sort of that neutral line. Below 200, you've got negative. Down into that 100 range is very negative. In a prison, he says that the average frequency is around 50 to 100. So, but that's with those who, there's more to that, but there's opportunity at every level. And then above the 200, you're going to see positives. So this is just quick. We're not going to go into it in depth. We do go into it more tomorrow during Kathy Truman's presentation. You'll see this again. So frequencies show up in each life area, and this is where I started to come in and start to put together frequency. So at time that I was starting to teach this and understand this, it was kind of like there's a frequency. And then I started to see, you know what? That's not totally true. I have a higher frequency in my spirituality. And at the time, I had a low frequency in my financial earning. You know, my vibe with money was not super strong. So the shifting that sometimes goes along has to be in different areas of your life. I have a lot of clients that are, you know, really low in their mental and emotional health, but there's other areas in their life that are functioning. And so I think it's helpful to sort it a little bit. And with that, Cherie's role in today's presentation is to talk more about the personal frequency. So we're going to tie in these frequency levels into self-esteem, personal well-being, the relationship with self, more or less. And so I want to kind of introduce now, as we start through this journey, starting with the 100 frequency. Some of you may relate to this, may have overcome this, may know people. And so, again, no judgment. But at a 100 level, we have people who are in destructive mode. Their fixes are actually harmful. And they're harmful to themselves and sometimes to others with their addictions like theft. These high-risk behaviors have potential for very long-term consequences. The shame, when we looked at that chart, is the lowest frequency. And typically people who are acting out in these ways are also on some deep level dealing with insecurity and some level of shame. The other thing that can happen at a 100 frequency is you can have a very functional person, and this is where I think my heart, and this is, we're going to dive into something hard and deep in a minute, and my heart goes out to those who are functioning and at the same time they're drowning. They're drowning. And that suicidal ideation, hopelessness and despair, a lot of times it's like they just try to push through and put a smile on their face and wait for it to go away. And what if it doesn't? That's the question. What if it doesn't? So we're going to hear Cherie's side of this story.
Thank you for setting that up, Cristine, and for your compassion and wisdom and all the work you've done. You've definitely put in your 10,000 hours. I am going to take the frequency pretty low here for a minute, but I promise I'll bring it back up. All right? So this is my first episode of my podcast that launched 3 years ago. I have things to say when I turned 50. I'm now 53, but the month after I turned 50, I started this podcast, Women Seeking Wholeness. And the first episode I did, I was like, I'm going to bring in my family story. I'm just going to hit it right out of the gate to let people know where I'm coming from. And you'll see the trigger warning there. My sisters and I share ritual abuse, institutionalization, suicidality, domestic violence. I would add to that addiction. All of these things are in my patterns, my family patterns, my inheritance, if you will. There's a lot of light and there's a lot of darkness in my family lines. Lots of polarity. I'm sure a lot of you can relate. But just to give you the very concise, because we could be here all day, and I did, I told you I would take you down and bring you up, but we are starting at this 100 frequency. When I was 21 years old, my aunt committed suicide. She was 32, my dad's sister. And in her suicide letter, she asked my parents to raise her 3-year-old son. She drove to the top of a monument in Colorado, put a pillow over the exhaust pipe, and died, and left letters behind asking my parents to raise her son. So my parents have 6 children, and their 7th is my cousin that they raised. And he was 3, and I was 21 at the time of her death. I don't know how far back mental illness goes on both of my parents' lines, but, after a certain generation, like my grandparents, it was not reported. Depression, anxiety, mental illness, those things were not reported. Even in my mother's, who's a baby boomer, even her generation, those things were not being reported. So fast forward, I go get a psychology degree, and there could be a lot more I could say in between there, but I knew in my heart that I wanted to figure out what was happening because my mom had several cousins who committed suicide. My mother, bless her soul, struggled with depression, undiagnosed depression for many years. My mother's a literal saint, and there just was not the consciousness or the tools to help her. And also, when I started having children, I recognized that, well, first of all, the 7 children that my parents raised, only myself and one other sibling were not diagnosed bipolar at one point. And so in seeing all this, I visited, I have a sister a year older named Tanya and a sister 2 years younger named Shauna, and both of them were institutionalized at various times. And that's one of the reasons I got a psychology degree, because I love my sisters so much. I'm in the middle of these 2 talented, fabulous sisters. Both of them really struggled, really struggled. And in 2005, my sister Shauna, 2 years younger, mother of 5, took her life, and she was 34. Her children were 2, 4, 6, 8, and 12. That experience changed the trajectory of my destiny. My entire world exploded. Everything that I knew, thought I knew, felt, I can literally trace to that moment on April 29th, 2005. I was 36, she was 34. Our children were the same ages. We lived in the same community. We talked almost every day. I could tell a lot about her, but she was the most amazing, loving. She held a high frequency of love, but her body had a lot of problems. She had open heart surgery when she was 5. She had a full spinal fusion when she was 14. She had bipolar, and she was suffering from an addiction to painkillers because of her back surgery and other things. So I don't want her legacy to be suicidality. I want her legacy to be love, because that is what she definitely left behind. But I'm not going to glorify her choice, because the ripple effects of such have, come out, and it's created a lot of, it shook everything up in our family lines. So for me, I remember standing over her grave, and I promised that I would be her voice. And that's the only thing that I could think to do, because I like to talk. And also the love. Like, here I am looking at her babies, my babies, our family. And by the way, my sister Tanya, the one that's a year older than me, the first thing she said, we were all gathered at my house when we got the news, and my dad found that she'd gone to my dad's a retired police officer. He found she'd gone to a hotel. And that's where she'd taken her life. And she also left a note saying that she could be a better guardian angel than she could be a mother. There were many other things she said, but this was her last gesture of love. That's how she put it. And at the time of Shauna's death, she was on a dozen medications to manage bipolar. My sister Tanya, the first thing she said, she turned to my sisters, my other surviving sister, Robin, who's the blonde in this picture. I'm in the middle. Robin's blonde, and Tanya's the one on my left. Tanya said she beat me to it. In full transparency, my sister Tanya also had a suicide plan until that day. And Tanya was on more medications than Shauna. So this was a line in the sand for my mom, my sisters, my brothers. My brothers had been also treated for severe depression and anxiety. Now, one thing that I want to say here, just so I can give you guys some perspective. If you're on the earth right now, which you are, all right, the universe has a lot of trust in you. We are here to metastasize generations upon generations upon generations of malaise, illness, distortion. So I happen to have this genetic blueprint, which I'm sure a lot of you do, for mental illness. The good news is that the genes do not have to express. Now, I've been, quote unquote, crazy a lot in my life. We could have a whole series just on my craziness. I don't like that word, but I'm just trying to lighten it up a little bit. We are the ones. And that's the crux of my talk today. We are the ones. So if you are in the lower frequency, if you know someone who is, and by the way, I was at 100 frequency last year for like 3 weeks. Just so you know, like it's not like Christy's saying, it's aggregate, but it's your life experiences that give you the wisdom that creates the frequency patterns in your body. So when you experience any kinds of transitions situationally, like COVID or death of a loved one or a divorce or a move or a religious transition or anything that just rocks your world where nothing's the same ever again, you're going to dip back down. Okay, you can go to the next slide. I don't know if I have.
Yes, that was a perfect introduction to the 200 level, because it's that what you're describing is that potential to then move. Like you said, there's a catalyst often in that 200 frequency, or in that
usually it's
or
loss.
200.
Yeah, usually it's loss.
It is usually loss.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And actually in the higher frequencies, it's the same. It's loss, because we have these attachments that
it is almost always lost. You're absolutely right. And so with that catalyst, this 200 level becomes an opportunity then to start to switch. But if you're going in circles and you stay at the 200, it will look like a dependency on non-solutions. One example is like financial assistance, or, a medication that, that's got lower risk, or a drug that has lower risk, and lower harm, but it's a non-solution over time, long term. And a lot of times people will circle around this functional and non-functional. And so you'll have as many good days as bad days, as many, the ups and downs. You kind of don't get anywhere because, financially you might be just making ends meet and not really getting ahead. And in life, that's how it feels. So with the emotional ups and downs, and self-esteem a lot of times is low or fragile or dependent on others. And you just kind of feel stuck. So I think a lot of...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I think the qualifier of these lower frequencies is there's a dependence on exteriors. So you haven't yet awoken, or maybe you're in the beginning stages, and life will keep teaching you. But in these lower frequencies, everything's about your environment. And you feel sort of, and I know this is a sensitive word, victimized. You become a victim to your environment because you haven't yet awoken to the higher realms of self-esteem and what your power is. So I just wanted to say that this is a losing game of the circling that we're talking about here, because until the focus goes on the inner life, that you stay stuck.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for adding that. Okay. So let's hear about Cherie's journey.
So this is actually a year before Shauna died. Well, actually, no, it was before that. My awakening was in the year 2000, January to be exact, Y2K. Shauna, my sister who passed away later, she called me one day and she said, Cherie, I need you to look up something on the Oprah Winfrey website. So I did, and there was a thing on living with your in-laws on the sidebar. I happen to be living with my in-laws with these two babies who are now 25 and 23, Noah and Savannah. I was nursing her, drowning, living with my in-laws. It was a really low time. I was like, is this all there is? I mean, it was diapers and kids and living in an unfinished basement, and I don't have an amazing relationship with my in-laws. And so anyway, the Oprah Winfrey, I sent an email because they were looking for people living with their in-laws. I was like, no one's going to read this. A producer called me 3 days later and asked us to be on the show. My in-laws, my husband. And so we did. We flew actually, and they brought a film crew to my in-laws' home. They flew us to Chicago. I was on live with in front of national TV, in front of millions of people. And the reason I say that was my and by the way, we represented a very healthy version of coexisting with your in-laws, I feel like. And I had to take my baby because she was nursing. So I met Oprah nursing my baby and all of that. But I can credit Oprah to my awakening because that episode, I didn't get to see it obviously till I got home. My mom had taped it for me. And I was just like, what? Who? I did not recognize myself. And it was just this recognition. It was just this moment of like, this is not who you were born to be. This is not what you're expressing is not really you. So yeah, you can go. I am a woman of faith. I always have been. I love my spiritual life, my inner life, and the God of my understanding. I went to him and on my knees and I said, okay, I'm drowning in diapers and I'm getting depressed and I need help. Send me something. I need to do my mission in life. I don't know. I cannot see my way out of this. And within 3 days, my really good friend called me and invited to me a conference, and there was a Mrs. Utah speaking. I live in Utah. And I was like, oh, that's great, whatever. And the director was looking for contestants. So fast forward, I got talked into doing the pageant. I didn't win the first time. In fact, I didn't win till the 6th time because I had another baby. I competed in different systems. But the time that I actually won was in 2004. And so coming up on because I'm really not good with math. How many years ago was that? 18 years next month. This was my metamorphosis. This was my time to decide how I wanted to show up on the earth. And I knew it. I knew the universe was giving me a pageant of all things. I mean, a mother in high heels and a swimsuit or whatever. I didn't even know there were married women pageants. But I decided I was going to keep competing till I won. And what was really interesting about that, I won when I was 35, and I had to go through a lot. I had to go through a lot of self-talk, self-defeating. I mean, I was always the bridesmaid, never the bride growing up. My sister was Tanya was the homecoming queen. Like, I had all these beliefs that I had to work through. And yeah, so that experience, my platform was inspiring greatness in girls and women. So I worked with daughters and their mothers. And what was really kind of paradoxical about all of this is my sister was losing her life force in my backyard. So she actually took her life the year I was Mrs. Utah, 3 weeks before I passed on my title. And that's why, here I was in my, I was sort of going up in this frequency of something. I was moving with this force that wanted to take me to become better and bring out my beauty and my voice and my gifts. And then my sister was slowly dying. She was in a 90-day treatment center. And I was also working at an addiction recovery center and clinical, like the year I was Mrs. Utah, literally down the street from the place she was in residential. So all of these things were happening. And
these are the 3 big things. When I mentioned like these 3 big things happened all within, what was it, 2 years or so? The Oprah, the pageant,
all the
and
stuff.
the loss.
It was all just boom, boom, because I asked to open it up. Now my sister, there's a lot we can say about where she was at, but she came and supported me on my whole pageant journey. She came to nationals when I went and competed in nationals, and I experienced a lot of survivor guilt, a lot.
Wow.
Because she did call me.
Wow, that just added a whole nother layer. And I've heard your story so many times, and oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of guilt.
Wow.
And actually, I had to work through this later, but that crown came to mean something very different for me. It was her crown of thorns. And I realized later that my expansion was costing other people their lives. That I locked that belief in. This was 18 years ago. So I had to work through a lot of, I can't sustain life. I was having lots of miscarriages. There were a lot of things going on, and but you can go to the 300 level slide if you want.
Let's go there. Okay. Yeah. Let's come up from that. It's painful to go through these awakening, I guess they're kicks in the pants, something,
Yeah. Well, it's, the reason I put this here, and I know you wanted me to tell my Mrs. Utah story, but when we're looking at your success, this is that 4th bullet point, that the way you see yourself the way you value yourself is tied into what you achieve. That was my MO from girlhood.
Wow.
Part of it came from religious programming. A lot of it just came from me. I'm just a natural high achiever by nature. But when your performance is based on, when your worth is based on your performance, you're going to be in that cycle of achieving, and going and getting recognized. And it can look like really cool because you're doing good stuff. That inside, if you don't feel intrinsically worthy, you'll keep chasing crowns and achievements and all of those things.
And heroic deeds. And
savior complex. Yes.
And I've gotten in touch with this on such a deep level lately to see that, and so it's a mixed bag, just like the other frequencies. The 300 level is really common. It's actually about the average frequency, I think, in the United States, in developed countries. And there's a lot of good. And you've got social workers and teachers and law enforcement and military and all these, systems and people that devote and serve. And we are so grateful to them. And at the same time, it doesn't work all the way emotionally, right? It's, there's things going on in the self-esteem being tied to personal success and achievement and comparison downfalls. It's like you're striving to, just try to keep up or to do better. But there's that superior, inferior that goes back and forth, and conflicts. There's a lot of marriages at risk here. There's a lot of, and people that don't feel like they can be, they're not necessarily in healthy relationships at a 300 frequency, because you've got codependency and you've got complexity and self-esteem, and ego. There's a lot of ego going on at 300.
Yeah, and also with these, just keeping in mind that the way expansion and evolution of the soul and body work is that you'll hit maybe a 2 or 3 or 4 or even 500, and then you go back.
Yeah.
It's like 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, sometimes 10 steps back. So this is not linear, I guess is what I'm...
And people start to evolve and then get scared, and that fear a lot of times brings us back to the 300. A real common scenario, and I started to look at this in my life, is when you know that you can do more, like go into self-employment, for example, but it gets scary and things get scarce, and then you go back to like, well, I'll just work for somebody else and let them, be in charge of my life. So just it's so many examples there. But okay, moving to the story. So tell us more about this.
Oh, yeah. Fast forward many, many years. I love the path of the mystic. So it supersedes religion. It supersedes groupthink and spirituality and groups and hierarchy. I just love the idea. So I decided that I was going to start a business, and it grew international very quickly. It's basically a holistic health company, and in a year I shot really high up in the company and was able to generate wealth, to be honest. And my husband he was already losing his job, but he decided that we would raise our kids at home. I now have 5 children, by the way, and the last 2 came through private adoptions, which is a whole other story. But I decided that I wanted to, just like I promised my sister, but I wanted to bring it out and take my path as a mystic and move it more into like the emotional, spiritual psychology piece and holistic emotional health. So I just crafted my own thing, and I took a lot of things I learned from pageantry and beauty and speaking. And this picture is one of the most sacred experiences of my life was taking my 19-year-old daughter, Savannah, who I nursed backstage at Oprah, to Africa, and we raised money to build a women's empowerment center with a group of other people. The other picture is me climbing Mary Magdalene's mountain on a sacred Mary Magdalene pilgrimage in France. I have been all over the world, Australia, New Zealand, all all over Asia, Korea, Japan, of course, Europe, and pretty much all over the United States, teaching about coming back home to yourself through biochemistry, because we do have physical bodies. And I also have taught a lot about frequency. So for me, it was try and shut me up. Even though I was a mom, and I'll get into this in a second, but I didn't want my children to be the reason that I said no. And in saying that, it's not denigrating women who are full-time mothers or who, try to juggle. It's all they can do to handle their kids. Why would, this is just a completely neutral statement, but I have to say it, that your children are sent to you for the specific purpose of seeing you expand, and only you know what that is. When you tap into the frequency of your heart, which I started to do when I was going in between that 300 and 400 level, I could feel this I could feel there were transitions coming. I could feel there was something shifting, and like my kids were part of it, but like I didn't want to shut that part of me down. It would be like being born an opera singer and saying, don't ever sing anymore. Your days of singing are over. You can go to the next slide, because that kind of feeds into this 400. Are you okay if I explain that just from what I'm talking about with choosing? So doing isn't difficult, deciding is. This is one of my favorite quotes by Jim Rohn. So when you make the switch from extrinsic worth, achieving models in your religion, achieving models in academia, achieving models with your family dynamics, when you make the switch from it's me, I'm it, I'm the common denominator, it usually comes with a heartbreak. So the entry into these higher frequencies is couched in the dark night of the soul. Some of you probably heard that. It's the very last bullet point there. But the biggest marker of the dark night is that you feel completely alone. And the reason that you feel alone, and this is actually a high frequency state, so let me explain this, okay? Because here we are going up in the frequencies, and now we feel alone. What's up with that? Isn't that a lower frequency? But this is the hero's journey. This is the heroine's journey. We've been programmed to be afraid of the unknown. And so we have this collective fear in the collective consciousness about being left alone. And so we hold on to the groups, we hold on to the hierarchies, because they surely know better than we do. Most people cling to the known because we've had generations of hardwired programmed to be afraid of it, and I knew that I had to break out of that. So the longer that you can sit with uncertainty, knowing that these transitions are happening within and around you, the marker of the dark night is it presents itself to you. It's not something that you cause or choose. The universe sends you through a series of, it's very tailored to you, so I'm not even going to say. For me, it was loss. It was questioning what I'd been programmed with. It was, hey, what if I step out? My heart is saying something different than what's being taught over here. So how do I... So I had to literally like surrender. And I love this part right here. Progression is driven by purpose. You have this intrinsic knowing that in order for you to up level, you're going to have to get blasted. You're going to have to be on the floor. You're going to have to be in fetal position. You're going to have to question everything. And I do mean everything. Some of your relationships will fall apart. Your circle of friends will shift. And this is why you feel alone. But what's happening is a process of alchemy that is bringing you into soul sovereignty. And this is a sacred space of your own knowing. It's your actually getting rid of the old you. The old you is dying. And the new you, to make space for the new you. So this happens somewhere, I don't know, between 300 and 400, but usually sometimes later stages of 400. For me, it was like age 49 where it really hit, where it really, really hit. I almost divorced my husband. I took a sabbatical from my religion. I had to say goodbye to lots of other unhealthy relationships and lots of other people that were demanding, I questioned everything. And I said, it's time for a do-over. Because what I couldn't tolerate anymore was fake and illusion. And we're seeing this happen, you guys, on a global scale with COVID, that there is just a general intolerance for things that are illusory. That, yeah, and we probably need to go a little quicker, Christy, sorry. So here's, so this is basically like, my brand is Stand, Speak, Shine. It's all about choosing to stand and then expressing, and then in that expression, you actually heal. That's where the shine factor comes. It's not about winning a beauty pageant or being anything other than what you innately are, your own essence. You can go to the next slide if you want to quickly.
Yeah, the 500 level, I don't know if you want to add to that, but it's like you can start to be in a place that's steady, because there's quite a roller coaster up to this point. And that emotional mastery, that steadiness, you can surf the changes in your life. And I believe that really Cherie and I, where we started to find this was when together we started working with Nityashanti, a former Buddhist monk, and to get into that Eastern mind. And you'll hear me talk about the Eastern mind.
He was literally the teacher that showed up, like, for both of us.
Yeah.
Like independently, yeah. How does a Buddhist monk end up in Logan, Utah? I don't even know.
But yeah, you'll hear me talk about the Eastern mind and the Christian heart, because bringing the two together is like powerful, but it's an integration process that it's very, and I think Cherie's, can speak to that.
I want to just say here at this 500 level, I want to just read a little teeny excerpt from his book about this 500 level. He said, at this level of development, the capacity to discern essence becomes predominant. The core of an issue becomes the center of focus. As reason is bypassed, there arises the capacity for instantaneous recognition of the totality of a problem and a major expansion of context, especially regarding time and process. Reason deals only with particulars, whereas love deals with wholes. So when I said I was questioning everything, what was really happening is my logic brain, my reasoning, which are at the lower frequencies, was dismantling. I was no longer in logic. I was in a state of love, or wanting to be whole and asking for that. And it was not a black, white, right, wrong process for me anymore. It was just like, I want to be whole, whatever it takes. And that love I could feel the love, but my heart was breaking at the same time.
Yeah, it is the wholeness. And this, you start to share at this point, and your voice becomes this, I guess, messaging, to get, because what you learn by the time you get here, you want to be a teacher and a leader and share, because it's an amazing place to get to.
Well, and it's not me. At the 500 and above levels, it becomes about oneness.
Yeah.
So it's like a flock of birds going together. It's not like one bird going, let's go together, people. Mm-hmm. Let's raise the consciousness together. And that was what was different from when I was doing leadership before, like in my business.
That's different than the 300.
Mrs. Utah, yeah. Very different.
Very good. Okay, I'm glad we brought that in. Okay. So basically when you start to vibrate at these higher frequencies, you become like these tuning forks, and you can influence others just through your vibration, just through showing up into something. And, whether it's a room or a summit or whatever that may be. Now we get to hear Cherie's part. I know we're probably not going to have much time through this, but that's okay.
Okay, so all of that is just a foundation for what I'm about to share with you about what is happening right now on our planet. Like I told you before, you're it. You're the one. The world's been waiting for you. It's your frequency and vibration. It is not what you accomplish. It is not what you do. You have been positioned exactly where you need to be because you need to raise the frequency of where you are, and it starts inside of you. It's not about making your home more beautiful. It's not about your kids achieving. It's you. You're it. You're the source and the center of it. So the new feminine leadership paradigm, and by the way, I've worked masculine models before of high success, high achieving, goal oriented, and they don't work. They don't work for me anymore. I can't do them. I honor the healthy masculine, but the new leadership, the new feminine leadership paradigm is like, hey, the globe is going through a planetary crisis of streaming the feminine consciousness in, and so the feminine is awakening in men and women. And really, it is such an exciting time in history because of the uncertainty. Remember, we're afraid of uncertainty. That's why the globe's freaking out right now. What's next? What's going to happen? What's this? But when you hold the higher, or we can attach to the higher frequency states, these old models are dying, is what I'm saying. And the reason there's so much uncertainty is it's the patriarchy that got us into this mess. It's old ideological constructs that have gotten us into this mess. And so we can't create with the same frequency that got us into this mess. We need a whole new frequency to create. So you can go to the next slide. These are this is kind of a goofy picture of my family. It was last Halloween or 2 Halloweens ago. But my kids teach me all the time about how I hold that tension between mothering and my purpose. And the way of the goddess, this is the new leadership feminine paradigm. It's not about mother guilt. It's not about I have to rob Peter to pay Paul. In other words, I have to sacrifice my family and my whole home in order for me to step into my path. That's old thinking. Family life and business or purpose are not separate in the feminine leadership paradigm. They, women's brains, we are lit up like Christmas trees. We can't separate these. So you're a governess in both domains. Your purpose or your mission or business or whatever, a mission, by the way, a mission is something you want to do. A calling is something you have to do. And some people's calling, like mine is to do podcasts and write books and all this stuff. Some people's calling is to hold a high frequency. To literally, that's their mission. They're because you guys know that when you change your frequency, you're elevating the collective. It's because it's not, none of us are separate. We're all one, and that's kind of a deeper concept, but you recognize that you have to do it. I have a whole theory on depression now. It's like I spent my whole career trying to crack the code on depression and breaking these family patterns and epigenetics. Here's the thing. Frequency waves carry information. They're embedded in our energy fields. When you say, I am a goddess, you activate something inside of you, even if you don't believe it yet. And wow. This path of, in epigenetics, the school of thought is that info from your environment signals your genes to express, okay? So this is why coherence fields and frequency are so important, because you can change your gene sequence, or you can repattern the frequency waves of your genetic expression so that you can have a blueprint for illness and not have to have it expressed. But the reason I bring this up now is that we're in a new era and we need more women's voices, and men too. Men who are in touch with their feminine, which does not make them emasculated. It actually empowers them because it's a heart frequency. Okay, you can go to the next slide. This is my creation compass that I've been developing since 2008, and it's got 16 points. And I'm just going to give you the crux of it. This is what we all seek. We all seek to have love and power. So receiving is always preparatory to giving. You all know this. You can't give from an empty vessel. So the idea is that you connect in the middle there. You connect to presence or source or the I am. And in that stillness, which is the quantum field, the dark cosmic void, the womb of the cosmic mother, if you will, empty, unlimited possibilities, all frequencies, okay? when you surrender into that presence, and there are many ways to do this through meditation, but you just ask and you say, show me, because you go straight to the unknown. And in that, you become empowered. You receive power. You become empowered. This is all about the frequencies of light and being open, opening your heart field, opening your mind. You can go to the next slide. So I teach something called divine order, and you can see it starts God and then self, family, humanity. Now, God is just an all-encompassing term for universal source. Everybody has their own constructs. Don't let the name trip you up. It's more about what is the higher power source in the center of my energy field. What do I claim as the highest frequency for my energy field? And again, that's right in the middle of presence and stillness. But we receive the love of God. We receive and become empowered in the self, which is the I-thou relationship. So everything about you becoming empowered and being filled with these frequencies is about receiving. It's about opening yourself to receive. What we've done in the past, especially in the old toxic masculine models, is we've gone straight into giving, and mother martyr syndrome is right up there too. We give to our family. We give to our communities, our churches, our schools. And that's down there in give power, right? Because we're doing it as empty vessels. We're not filled up. And then we wonder why we burn out and we are in a stress response all the time. I still have to manage this a lot. I have a very busy life. But I have to always remind myself to keep going to still point, right in the center, open myself and ask to be filled up with those frequencies. Okay, you can go to the next slide. You actually have three brains, or three main neural processing centers: your mind brain, your heart brain, and your gut brain. And your heart is your center field. It's your, I don't even know. You have more neural pathways that run from your heart to your brain than the other way around. So your heart is constantly trying to communicate to your brain. So my goal in life is to be leading a heart coherence. Like, that's my whole goal in life, is to be heart-led. Because I know that my intuitive center, my heart, is always trying to communicate to my logic brain what needs to happen. So when we're talking about these, when your heart and brain are in coherence, it naturally orders the sensory information that's coming into your fields. And I can't emphasize that enough. When you're in coherence, in other words, when these centers are connected, think of a figure eight, and right in the center of the figure eight is your heart. It goes up to your mind, back down to your heart, down to your gut, and you could even say that's your second chakra, back up to your heart in a figure eight, but your heart's in the middle. When you have this kind of coherence, and you have this kind of, connection, and you can go to the next slide, what happens is you start to heal patterns naturally. You don't have to think about it. It's the frequencies will order the patterns for you. There's just patterns of distortion. We learn through resonance. So your higher, go back please. So your higher chakras are all about receiving, the power of intimating through thought. And your seventh chakra, of course, is your crown, and it's all connected to knowing. There is a difference between feelings and emotions. Emotions are basal. They are mostly focused in your lower chakras, and they're very dynamic. It's like information coming through, and they carry a charge. Feelings are pure. Feelings of, when you get into these higher frequency states, you can feel your heart field opening, and there's absolutely nothing like that feeling. And what's happening is it's communicating to all these centers of your body, and you don't have to work so hard to heal. Things start ordering on your behalf. So I just wanted to make a distinction between feelings and emotions. Feelings are pure. The heart actually is a straight shooter. It's the perfect counselor. And this is why when I was saying, that my heart was breaking open and I was in fetal position on the floor and everything was transitioning, everything in my life was shifting, my heart in the breaking open was informing the next steps of my journey, I just had to surrender into it. And this place of pure feeling is pure consciousness, all right? So it's not going to be happening in your higher cerebral functioning. Cause and effects look like this. You have a thought, which you hope will create a certain outcome. If you want to shorten the time between the time you have that thought of something you want and thing being received, it's change your frequency. And how do you change your frequency? How do you change the effect in your life? Through this cause, through causing an effect, which is a very clear intention. I want, or I will. And then pairing it with an elevated emotion. And you can go to the next slide. These are some of the feminine embodiment, pure consciousness feelings that I teach in my course, Stand, Speak, Shine. I meet so many women who do not know what they want. I used to be there too. And it's just such a state of limbo for your soul, and it can create so much dissonance and depression because you aren't in touch with, you're so wanting to make it okay for everybody else that you haven't climbed in enough to go, what do I actually want? And what you want are feelings, by the way. You don't want things. You're searching for a feeling. And even people in prison that Christy referenced, they committed those crimes because they were searching for some kind of a feeling. And so get in touch with what you actually want to feel. My highest value of feeling, I guess you could say my highest core value is peace. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So these are the 12 feminine principles that I teach in my course. Connection is first. That's the center of it all. This is about coming and learning to understand and hear your own soul voice. What is the sacred feminine? What is intimacy? Into me, see. Power, which is all about grounding, connecting to your womb wisdom, finding the queendom within, nourishment. And this is where you really get into a place of healing and flow through sustenance, through putting things into your life that bring that flow. Alchemy, all things Mother Earth, all things medicine woman. Sensuality and the alchemizing of emotions. And then sensuality is not just about sexuality, although that's part of it, but feminine magnetism, the art of drawing to you. This is the new leadership paradigm, is drawing because you're in a new frequency. And through that frequency, you're now drawing a similar frequency to you. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. So if there's a whole process for bringing that to you through feminine magnetism. Containment, which is all about setting boundaries, sitting on your inner throne into your courtyard and having a state of inner and outer poise. Depth, so this is where we go into the dark night, the descent journey, all about initiation into your soul path. Beauty, it's not just about your physical beauty, but women have a need for beauty in and around them. So we talk about femininity and adornment and refinement. Sovereignty, which is my favorite new word. It's all about inner authority. How do you claim your own inner authority? How do you have dominion over all your life domains? And then expression. So inspiration minus expression equals depression. Voicing, communicating, expressing, getting out what's inside of you. Creativity, that's where it lives, where you start to manifest, where you take the frequencies that you've now sourced inside of you and you begin to manifest. And that looks like maybe going and stepping into your soul calling and getting more clarity on that. And then the last step is wisdom. Now, these are embodiment practices. These are ways of being. They're not just principles. So wisdom means like, here I am, I'm on earth, I've claimed my space. My past has given me all of this wisdom, and so you cultivate that. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So the biggest question then to ask yourself, this is a deep one, how are you experiencing yourself? Are you in love with your own heart? Are you in love with your own frequency and essence? This is a Hindu Sanskrit term, tat-than-asi, which means basically you, what I told you guys earlier, you're it. Everything that you're seeking is already inside of you. It just needs excavating. You have source. You are divine. You are divine soul. You're it. And the claiming of that is so painful. It is so painful to claim this, you guys. It took me wrestling on the floor in blood, sweat, snot, and tears for years. And I still, to hold this frequency, you guys, imagine a kaleidoscope. And imagine the very center of a kaleidoscope is you claiming the I am. Then all the frequency patterns that you create from knowing that, waves upon patterns energetically, moves yourself into order. And you become the goddess of your own life domain. Okay, next slide. So my question is to all women and men, and I've interviewed hundreds of people on my podcast at this point, thought leaders from all different backgrounds and traditions, and getting in touch with nature, which we've been told, and this is where the feminine is streaming in. Our churches have not taught us this. We have not learned how to be at one. We have learned separation. And so it has caused discord, because the opposite of love is fear and separation, and it's a lie that you're separate. So ask yourself, if I'm not deeply in love with my life and my being and my essence, what will it take? What's next? Am I committed to changing this? Am I committed to changing my frequency? Because when you change your frequency, you change everything. Go to the next slide. I do offer a 12-week feminine transformation course called Stand, Speak, Shine. It's online, self-led. This used to be, when Christy did it, was over $600 or $700. I've really streamlined it down to $222. By the way, 2 is my favorite number. 20. I love that this is. I love it. This is February. So this is 222. I've been waiting for this forever. But 2/12/22. Good enough. But if you want to get $40 off right now, it's wait listed. But if you wanted to just go ahead and buy it, you can either get on the wait list and you don't have to pay right now, or if you want, I'm going to leave this code open until the end of probably February, to get $40 off. You just use the code at checkout, Stand, Speak, Shine 40. Now, with this course, it's all self-led. You're not going live with me or a group or anything. It's all done at your own pace. And so we take each of those 12 feminine embodiment principles that build on each other. And then you're able to go into a Facebook community, whether you want to go on incognito or share. And I'll go in once a month and do a deep dive live and answer questions. But this is my baby. This is all the things I wish that somebody had sat down and taught me when I was a young mom, or when I was just, anyway, the consciousness just wasn't there when we were younger. But I just want to leave you with one more thought. Everything about healing involves flow. So everything that we talked about when Christy and I were talking about these lower frequencies, I told you last year I went back down to 100, is because I was getting ready to up level something massive. And then it was like, all that wisdom wasn't lost. Like, for instance, I was probably at 400 or 500 for a time, and then I dipped back because of the situation I was dealing with, down to a 100 or 200 frequency. But when I came back out of that, I was still higher, if that makes sense. So when we're showing you that map of consciousness with those frequencies, again, it's not linear. Also know it's the frequency you embody generally most times. Let's just say the 80-20 rule. It's the frequency you're embodying 80% of the time that determines where you're at on this map of consciousness. So when you embody the I am thou, even if it's fleeting and you just have a recognition of, oh my gosh, God is in me. Oh my gosh, we're all one. Oh my gosh, this is what is happening. I'm unplugging from the matrix. Holy shit. Sorry, I usually don't swear, but that's the best fitting thing. When I started to unplug from the group think matrix, it was an earthquake. That's why I had to dip back down. But when I came back up, it was like, okay, where am I? What's going on? It was very jolting. Each of you will have your own path with this, and it's very sacred. But here's the thing. Your body is a living receptacle of truth. It cannot lie. Your energy centers hold intelligence, and yeah, they can be thrown off, and chakras and everything can get all out of whack in your auric fields and all kinds of crazy stuff. But here's the thing. When you come back to center and you affirm your divine identity, however you want to define divine, this is where the change really takes effect, because you're in a new frequency. You're embodying a new frequency, and those patterns that emerge from there integrate you. So healing is flow. The highest path is integration. It's not perfection. And you're already whole. Wow. You just have to remember it and let it stream in. So I hope you guys will choose to join me on Sanskrit Shine 2022, because this is an epic year for the feminine. That's all I'm going to say there. This is epic stuff. So.
This is epic. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
It's an epic time in history.
Yes. I'm so grateful that you are speaking, that you are shining and bringing this forward. It's given me courage on a soul level. And I had not tapped into my soul until I did your course. Oh. And I thank you from the bottom of my soul for that.
So this is where you can find me on Instagram, and it's just my name, Cherie.Burton. All of the stuff about my podcast and all of the conversations around this frequency stuff. And then if you want to ask to join my private Facebook group, Women Seeking Wholeness on Facebook, I would love to have you in there as well.
Wonderful. Yes. And, I'm sure they can ask you questions on Facebook or Instagram. But yeah, we've had people saying they can totally relate to coming out the other side, just being able to see that more clearly through understanding these principles, the awareness that the cycling will serve me. I love this. I really appreciate the reality of the cycle type. Sharon says, it will serve her as long as I keep raising my vibration and continue to learn every day.
I think it was Sharon too said, healing is flow and higher is integration, not perfection. If you think about frequency, it moves, it flows, okay? And a block or getting stuck is stagnant energy. So at the quantum level, healing, the vibration of healing is about flow. And so what happens is when you have that flow, your body's intelligence and the source energy, and I don't understand how it works, no one does, but what starts to happen is it repatterns you. When you have these flow states, it repatterns your energy for you, and it integrates parts of you, your past, your present, and your future. So
it's huge. Integration is so huge. And I think that's where, and we've reconnected over the years, but that was one, area I was in, is learning brain integration when we reconnected, because that is the answer. I'm going to meme that. Integration, not perfection. And we had somebody else.
Which is wholeness. Yeah. Wholeness is just wholeness. Integration. Yeah. What if when you were sitting in church as a little kid, they told you were perfect and whole as you are? Mm-hmm. How would that have changed things for you? If you were taught in your family, at school, at church, and everywhere you went that you were whole.
Wow.
How would that have changed?
And I think it changes. I've heard several people in the chat have mentioned the loss of someone in their life committing suicide. Mm-hmm. And the integration part, and this is where I found there's so much to that, because there's part of us that doesn't want to be here. Or there's part of us that just...
We're homesick.
Is lost, is homesick, yeah. And when we claim that part and talk to that lower frequency within us, is when a lot of times that's where we need to be loved, right? And to be accepted.
For those of you who have lost someone to suicide, that is a pain unlike anything else a person can experience. I'm so sorry, and I'm not sorry, and I'll tell you why. You're it. You're the pattern breaker. You're the light that shines on the loss. That person who sacrificed their time on this earth, sometimes they do that to awaken the family lines. I'm not trying to glorify that choice, but this is the line in the sand for you to take that person's life and make it something amazing by changing the frequency in you.
Yes.
I used to be on this whole change the world crusade.
Mm-hmm.
I still go there in my mind because I care so much about humanity, but it's really me. I'm just changing me.
You're
That's
a
my
world,
highest
and
calling.
that compass, kind of lays that out.
We can't heal, save, or fix anyone. We can only love.
Yeah.
Which conversely, paradoxically, is the healer.
Yes. Love is a healer. Yeah.
Love is the healer.
Well, so people can reach you at Cherie at cherieburton.com.
Yes. Or you can message me on those platforms, Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah. Cherie, thank you for being part of it.
Thank you. This has been...
And all of you as well.
So beautiful. I can feel everyone.